Hello and welcome to the Heat Check podcast, the Miami Herald's Miami Heat podcast. I'm David Wilson, and I am joined, as always, on the other line by Anthony Chiang, our Heat beat writer here at the Herald. Anthony, what's going on?
David, should I stay away from the Heat? I missed a game, and they have their best win of the season. You covered the Phoenix game last night on Monday, so maybe I should just stay away and not go on this road trip.
Yeah, I guess on my first game of the year wound up being a pretty good one. I mean, like you said, the best win of the year, I would say, for the Heat. The
Sure.
Golden State win was good too, but the way that, well, there's obviously a couple of factors. One, the Suns have just been better than the Warriors this year. Two, the comeback, right? The 13 points in it was like 7.5 minutes, basically. I don't know when the Heat scored the first point in that, exactly when they scored the first points in that run, but I think Phoenix went up with 8:03 left. Heat storms back from 13 down. And most importantly, the way they played in those last 8 minutes, that was, I mean, you're not going to play that well for 48 minutes every night, or not even necessarily for 24 or 36 minutes every night. But their defense was incredible. Bam was fantastic, obviously. And then Jimmy makes the signature play of the season so far for the Heat to stuff Devin Booker. Not quite at the buzzer. Booker actually got like kind of a good look at the buzzer. It was an off balance
Yeah,
three, but obviously
yeah.
he makes those shots.
All
But
things considered, it was
but
not a
Jimmy
bad
was
look.
all over him on that last possession, stuffs him, and then forces him into a step back off balance three at the buzzer. And the Heat escapes, or not escapes, rallies for their most impressive win of the year. As I just highlighted, there's a lot of different angles to go here. Obviously, we're also recording this, we should say, on Tuesday morning, so the Heat will play Wednesday night in Toronto and could lose, and will be like the oldest news in the world because of the way Heat
Yeah.
Twitter can vacillate through championship aspirations and Pat Riley's washed takes. But where do you want to start with this Suns game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with the defense,
Yeah,
right? I mean, obviously Jimmy and Bam were huge, but they were also very good defensively, and Bam obviously did a lot offensively.
off of the
Kind of,
defense.
yeah, off of the defense. But the defense has been concerning to start the year. We've talked about it a lot through the first few weeks, and even last night, like against Phoenix, for most of the game, Phoenix was making a lot of tough shots, but also the Heat's defense was giving up some easy ones as well. But that final 6, 7 minutes or so was probably, well, definitely the best defense we've seen from the Heat all season. They were flying around everywhere, but it also resembled last season's team, and they're doing things a little differently this year. They're not switching Bam as much because of different, the way this team is built. They're trying to make up for size deficiencies. But the way they played down the stretch last night was very close to the defensive team we saw in the playoffs last year when they were winning, and a lot of important wins last season. So I think that's the most important thing. And still, there's a long way for them to go. They're playing zone a lot. They didn't play it
Mm-hmm.
that much against Phoenix. They're playing zone a lot, and their zone has kind of carried the defense. The man-to-man defense is the third worst in the league right now. It's kind of crazy points per possession. So they have a lot of room to improve, but I think that was the most encouraging sign is, okay, when they need that type of defense, they can reach back and get it. And we saw that against, one of the better offenses in the NBA.
Yeah, the Bam scored, I think, 12 of the last 22 points, and the first 8 of those were all off of turnovers. It was, I think, a Jimmy steal, and then Bam does that
Yeah.
spin move for the N1. And then I think Caleb gets a steal, and Bam, I think, gets like Jimmy runs the break, and Bam gets a little floater off of it. And then Bam gets a steal and pushes himself and does, gets a dunk off a give and go with Max Drew. So it was really, they executed in the half court in the last minute there with Bam making, Bam Kyle pick and roll, getting them a couple important points there. But the run happened largely because Bam's aggression. We talk so much about Bam needs to be more aggressive. Bam needs to be
Hmm.
more aggressive. He wasn't necessarily more aggressive in the half court there. It wasn't like he was, obviously if DeAndre Ayton, that's not a guy that he's going to abuse in the post. It wasn't like he was taking over in the half court, but
Right.
he was really making the most of the opportunities to push, and that is, if Bam is going to be like the kind of scorer that people want him to be, which he probably never will be, but those games where he is putting up 30 points, those are going to be, it's going to start with the defense. And I think you really saw that, obviously down the stretch on Monday night.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, he's not going to score 30 every night. We know that. And I'm kind of tired of the conversation already at this point, honestly. Like, how long are people going to want Bam to do something that's not him, right? He does so many other things. And Eric Spoelstra kind of vocalized that last night after the game when he says, the conversation is always for him to score 40, and that's not really his role. His role is, he'll pick his spots, he'll find out what the team needs on a given night. Last night they needed him to be aggressive.
Yeah.
Down
if
the
they're
stretch,
forcing a ton of turnovers, he's going to score a lot because he's so good in transition.
He's athletic. He's a matchup advantage pretty much every time he steps on the floor, especially in the open court because he's so fast and athletic for his size. So he can finish around the basket. So yeah, if he has the opportunity in transition, he should go and finish. He shouldn't stop at the free throw line and kind of survey the court. He should go to the basket and either draw a foul or get a dunk.
He's a great free throw shooter.
Very good free throw shooter.
Big man.
Yeah. And he got to line a lot against Phoenix.
Yeah, he said I was like Jimmy.
It was like Jimmy. Yeah.
Line after the game.
That's been a big part of what the Heat want him to do, right? Like, if he's gonna raise the scoring average, it's not gonna be because he hits threes.
Don't hit those. Yeah. Don't settle for those mid-range pull-ups and he's pretty. He actually got fouled on a couple of those, like those little half floater. I don't know what you call those shots, like those
running floaters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he does. He shoots a lot of those. And I thought early in the year he was taking a lot of mid-range shots, like outside the paint. And it's funny, like I asked Eric Spoelstra about something with Gabe Vincent because Gabe Vincent shot really well in the mid-range. I asked him a couple of games ago about that, and he goes, like, that's not what we want. Like, we are going to push the shot profile that we want. We want threes and shots at the rim. And they were back early on. They were taking a lot of mid-range shots, and that number has gone down. And I was looking at like Bam's shot chart from last night. 17 of his 18 shots are in the paint. Yeah, and I think that's what the Heat want.
And again, some of them are those like 8-9 footers, but it's still a huge difference when you get into the paint. It forces the defense to collapse, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the one shot he didn't take in the paint was a 3.
Yeah, it was.
So you're seeing an effort by not just him, but other guys in the team of let's try to cut down these mid-range shots that we were kind of living on the first few weeks of the year. Paint shots, threes, and that offensive profile is usually going to work. Provide some type of success over the long run.
Yeah, it was. I think it was the blueprint, right? Like that was those 8 minutes were that was how the Heat are going to have to win games. It was, like I said, they're not going to play up. That was pretty much a perfect 8 minutes of basketball, but capitalizing on those transition opportunities, they've got to score off of those when they get them. Obviously, it starts with the defense, as we said, and just smart shots the entire way down the stretch. I think maybe Kyle Lowry took a mid-range jumper, and I think Jimmy maybe missed one from the corner. But for the most part, those were obviously all Bam shots were in the paint. Lowry and Strus both hit threes. Lowry and Martin both hit threes, and a lot of free throws. Like that was, it's hard to play perfect basketball like that, but that was like they cut out all the fat basically down the stretch there.
Yeah, and not to be Debbie Downer here, but the Heat needed everything they got. They won by 1 point.
Yeah, exactly.
They shot 45% on.
I know. I mean, the defense in the third quarter, like it kind of like all the stuff that happened before the game, but it was like a very eventful game even before the last couple of minutes. The third quarter was awful defensively. The first quarter they hit 7 threes, and Dwayne Washington Jr. had like 16 points in the first
game, half of his life.
Exactly. So it was a very eventful game before the last couple of minutes, and there's a lot to nitpick there. But we're early enough in the season. You're still more, I think, looking for moments of either what is wrong or what is going well.
What could work.
That was the most clear look at what could work for this team.
Definitely. But I just want to point out they shot 45% on threes, which was I think is a season high. They're 1-on-1 now when they shoot over 40% from 3, and they outscored Phoenix 22-2 at the free throw line. They still won by 1 point. Like that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah,
that it
the
was
defense was
even that
not good for
close.
most of the game. It was
Yeah,
just really good for the last 8 minutes.
yeah, yeah. By the way, the 2 free throws, fewest by Heat opponent in team history. 2 free throw makes, and the
Yeah.
4 free throw attempts are also the fewest by Heat opponent in Heat history. So you witnessed history last night, David.
Yeah, I did. And I think that maybe that moves us over nicely to the Jimmy Butler block and just a bigger look at the defense, because it would have been very easy for Jimmy Butler to accidentally foul Devin Booker on that last possession.
Yeah,
Um, a pretty wild possession. The Heat scores to go up, I think, with 35 seconds. Bam hit those free throws, and the Suns, you don't see a whole lot of 35-second possessions with the game on the line in the NBA, but they get a foul, so it resets the clock a little bit, and then ball's bouncing around, and it winds up with Booker at the top of the key with 10 seconds left. He runs it down to like 5, goes to his spot, right? I think everyone in the building kind of
yeah,
knew what was going to happen. Booker was basically going to say, can I beat Jimmy Butler in this situation? But Butler emphatically stuffs him, like textbook defense, basically. And then, obviously, like I said, Booker misses a prayer at the buzzer. Bam said that block goes down in history after the game. Great photo by our photographer Daniel Varela at the Herald. Like I said, signature moment so far of this Heat season, and Jimmy Butler runs over, gives Eric Spoelstra a big hug after the win, because he was, as he said, he was just happy they finally won a game with defense.
yeah. I mean, that's the main thing right from this game, the defense. But Jimmy, just his individual effort and defense on that play, and to use a Spo term, multiple efforts on that play
Yeah,
to make it just everything so tough on Devin Booker, who was really cooking for most of that game. Like he was like a machine out there. Was just so impressive. It's just another just more proof that Jimmy Butler is one of the best two-way players in the NBA.
yeah,
Like without a doubt. Like if you can do that to Devin Booker late in the game, I mean Jimmy hung in. He's not known for his athleticism, right? But he hung in the air there because Devin tried to stay up a little longer to kind of get Jimmy,
yeah. It was almost
on
like
the
a
way
double
down to get the
pump kind
shot.
of
Yeah,
thing.
double
Yeah,
pumped it. But Jimmy stayed up there and with his left hand too blocked that. Just as impressive as defensive play as you'll see in the NBA. And then to make the second shot, not as tough, but a tough one for Devin after getting the block. Just shows you the type of guy Jimmy is. And yeah, I mean, I think a comment Eric Spoelstra made after the game was interesting, where he's like, Bam and Jimmy are kind of the same guy, right? Like
yeah,
they're both
yeah. I feel
rugged
like we
players.
said that all the time. They're
Yeah,
such unique players. But yeah, you saw it last night. I mean, that game could have very easily. We're talking about the way that Bam won it on offense and Jimmy won it on defense. How many times on this
yeah,
show we talk about games where Jimmy scores 12 points in the last 8 minutes? Not necessarily the same way Bam did it, where it was all transition, but hitting tough jumpers or whatever. And then Bam wins it on the other end. I mean, the signature defensive play of the time we've been on this podcast was a Bam block in the bubble Eastern Conference
yeah.
Finals.
That game actually reminded me a lot of those bubble games, where Bam Bam took over on offense
He
in some of
did.
those
I
games.
can't remember if that was the same. Honestly, I don't remember. The Boston series blends
That,
together a little bit. Was it the same game where Bam had the takeover? I don't think it was.
that
With
was
the
I think
block and
that
the
I think it
takeover.
was the block was game one. And
Yeah,
the
the takeover
takeover,
was
I think,
maybe the
was the end
clinching
of the game.
game.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah,
clinching game against. I
yeah,
remember Daniel Tice was guarding him, and
yep, yeah,
that didn't end well for Boston, obviously.
yeah,
But yeah, last night I had flashbacks of that series just with the block. Obviously, it was Jimmy this time, and
yeah.
then Bam just taking over in the open court and just taking advantage of his athleticism. So yeah, I mean, again, that's perfect. They played pretty much perfect basketball over those final 7 minutes. That's hard to replicate, but we saw this team has been in so many close games, and they've
Mhm.
actually, I think they're 5-5 in clutch games. I think they might be the second or third most in the NBA so
Yeah,
far for the first few weeks. And these experiences are good, right? You learn things about yourselves when you're in these late game situations and you have to execute in the half court. Um, the Heat have done that a lot this year. And I think one of the most encouraging things from the first few weeks, I know the defense has not looked particularly good, but we've talked so much about the half court offense.
hmm
Half court offense has been solid this season.
Yeah.
I think they're 7 or 8 in half court offense.
Yeah, I mean,
And
Kyle Lowry, we've talked so much about Jimmy and Bam, and rightfully so, but Kyle Lowry was really good last night, just orchestrating, especially, late in game. They run 2 pick and rolls, like I said, with Bam and get Bam 4 points down the stretch. But, he hit timely threes. The three he hit in the corner off the Strus play, it was like a great give and go with Strus where he drives and brings the defense in and they lose track of him. I thought, there are a lot of guys really played well. Obviously, Caleb Martin hit a bunch of threes, but I think Kyle Lowry was obviously the third, he was the third banana last night behind Jimmy and Bam, but that was that's the expectation, is that he's going to be the third banana. And if that's the kind of Kyle they need.
Yeah. And Tyler Hero wasn't playing, which
right. Yeah, and Chris Paul wasn't playing for the Suns, so
yeah.
a little bit of a push-ish there.
Sure.
Depending.
Sure. But I'm just saying, like, Tyler Hero is one of the best players on the team, but he changes the way that he played.
Yeah,
right?
he does.
It probably would
those last 8 minutes would have looked very different if Tyler Hero was in there for Max Strus.
Yeah. So
they might have still won, but it would have looked a lot different.
Definitely. So that'll be interesting whenever he returns, which we expect it to be sometime soon. I've thought he was going to return the last few games and he hasn't, which has been a little bit surprising. But I would expect it to be on this trip at some point. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of incorporate him back in because they have been having success while he's been out.
All right, where do we want to go now? What have we still not done?
I don't know. We've done pretty much all.
Done a lot, yeah.
Yeah. Talk about the year injury and what that means for the roster, and then just close out.
Well, we can also do their up to 500.
8 of the next 10 on the road.
Yeah. All right. So Heat, with that win last night, get up to 500 for the first time this year, and I was kind of surprised that some of the guys were. A couple of people got asked about it. I think Spo got asked about it pregame, and Bam kind of talked about it a little bit after the game. Like, they kind of felt like not a big deal. Obviously, we're 14 games into the season, but they felt like it was kind of an important. Just an important mark to hit given the way this season started. You kind of feel the same way that 7-7, considering the way this started, is, I don't know, kind of an important milestone.
I mean, it's not where the Heat want to be, right?
Right. Yeah,
500 through 14 games, but I think all things considered, with how things started, I think they were 2-5 to start the year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you take it, especially now with 8 of the next 10 on the road. Like, you wanted to get back to that 500 mark before you start this tough stretch. This trip is not easy. I mean, Toronto, they're down a few guys, but they're still a tough team to beat at home. You have Washington, your Wizards, who are playing pretty well right now.
Well, they're a play-in contender, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, they're above 500. They're 8-6. Won 4 in a row.
Minnesota,
Cleveland, obviously. Cleveland looks like one of the best teams in the East, and then Minnesota. They've had their struggles, but they always give the Heat trouble.
Yeah.
Especially in Minnesota. You wanted to get to the trip at 500. I think that entering this homestand, that was kind of the goal, right? Start the trip at 500, kind of reset. And now if you go 2-2 in this trip, you come back 9-9, you take that, right?
Yeah. It's
a tough trip. So I do think, while it's not in the big picture where the Heat want to be right now, I think considering how things started, I get it why they're pretty happy last night to get back to this mark and why it means something.
Yeah, you can kind of brush away some of the the rightful panic that was coming when they were 2-5. It's like, all right, like, it's the NBA season. We play 82 of these.
We could still do it, like what we just did against Phoenix. Yeah.
Yeah. I think whenever we talked about going into this homestand, we were like, it was a huge stretch for them, right? Because they started so many on the road and they won 5 of 6 at home. Like, they really took care of business during this home. They had one road game in the middle of it, but really took care of business back at the building that will soon formally be known as FTX Arena.
One day. I don't know what it's going to be called, but I feel like every game, by the way, side note, like, I'm like asking, so do we still refer to it as FTX Arena, or
I know
what do we
all
refer
the signings up there? It's still on the court. I was kind of surprised how much was still. I guess they took it off the roof. I saw that someone that
was circulating, that photo, but that was actually from the installation.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It'll be off the roof at some point soon, I'm guessing, but it hasn't been done yet. And I'm assuming, I would just assume that maybe by the time the Heat return home,
Yeah, they got like
The
a
court,
week
it's probably
plus
off
on the
the
road
court.
now.
Yeah,
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 they could maybe take some of the signage down around the around, like they got the big sign obviously over the entrance
yeah.
by the bay, like
Biscayne, yeah.
yeah. So
What do you want it to be like? What would you before? Obviously there's going to be probably a new sponsor at some
right, they're gonna
point,
have a
but
placeholder name,
yeah. But what would your placeholder name be?
Miami Arena, right? It's gotta just be the
I think
Miami
so.
Arena.
I agree. I mean, people are like want it to be heat related, and I guess it could be, but since it's such like a multi-use venue, I think something
It's
more
not
like
owned
Miami
by the
Arena.
Heat, right? It's owned by the
Yeah,
county.
exactly.
Like
Right.
county
I,
kind of got them into this mess, but
that's another conversation.
yeah,
Yeah, I think Miami Arena makes sense. Like,
yeah.
pay respect to the history of the team and another building.
I just think it
Um,
sounds better than Heat Arena too. Like I don't
yeah,
know what else you would call it.
I know, like on the
You could do
broadcast and
the
stuff.
MIA Arena. I
Yeah,
think when it wasn't Phoenix when they were like between. I think it was like PHX Arena or something when
yeah.
they were between. But it was talk. I think it's Talking Stick now, right? But they were between two things. So, the Panthers have had a placeholder name all
Florida
year.
Live, right? Florida Live
Yeah,
Arena.
FLA Live
FLA
Arena.
Live, yeah.
So
Martins Park. Martins Park sounded fine. I mean, it's nothing special, but it sounded fine.
yeah,
But yeah, Heat Arena doesn't sound.
I think Miami Arena or MIA Arena, like a kind of a modern take on the Miami Arena,
Yeah,
right? Because I get if you don't want to call it Miami Arena because like the history of the Miami Arena, right? Like,
yeah,
we had a couple of different Orange Bowls over the year, right? Like there were like stadiums. We've had multiple Yankee stadiums. Like it's
yeah.
not like um,
So
so
yeah, it's not. It's not like it's never done. How about Heat's house?
Heat's House. It's like it sounds like a sitcom.
It kind of does. I've heard that that's what they're
They've been calling it
that,
on the
that's
broadcast.
what they're calling on the broadcast and like probably in arena, even though I wasn't there last
Yeah, I
night.
was. I should have been paying attention. I wasn't really.
But I think
I
that's what,
was the FTX on the court is kind of jarring, honestly, given the
everything
whole
that's
like
happened last week.
it's not yeah it's not. I mean, it was one thing when like they kept American Airlines on the building
Right.
even when they weren't getting paid for it anymore, but like I mean we're like it's it's like Enron, right?
Yeah, no, it's crazy like how fast that all ended, right? Like it was like not even a year and a half ago. That
Yeah, it was like last fall, right? Or like
it was
summer maybe, like
last
August
June.
ish. Oh yeah, yeah,
It was
right. You're right.
June 2021 when it became official that they changed
Right.
the name. It's been 17 months or not even like yeah, 17 months. And they signed a 19-year contract. Like I didn't
Got a
think it
lot
would
of money
last
up front.
19 years, but I didn't think it would only last a year and a half.
Got a lot of money up front though for it, I think, right?
Yeah. I think they got 20 million of the that's what Doug Hanks reported, I believe. I think the county got 20 million so far as part of the deal. And I don't know if they got other money up front. But yeah, I think the county still has to pay the Heat even if they're not getting money. Like that's
Yes.
part of
So
the
they have a
deal.
lot of incentive to
Hurry
find a
this thing up.
sponsor
Yeah.
really quickly.
Yeah.
Basically basically by the start of next season.
I would say so. I mean, I don't know if they'll be able to do it quicker, but like I would say probably by this offseason, they'll probably be. That seems
Yeah.
reasonable, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm sidetracked now. I don't remember where we were talking before.
I
Right,
mean,
with the road trip, right? I think we hit a
yeah,
lot from the game
we hit a
last night.
lot. I guess another thing worth noting is just the Omer Yurtseven injury,
Oh,
right?
right.
It's
Yeah.
unfortunate for the Heat and Omer that he's
Got to miss
scheduled to
some
undergo
time. Yeah.
surgery. Yeah, I think on Tuesday. So by the time you're listening to this, the surgery will be quote unquote successful, right? There's always
I
that
know. And
release.
Ira and I were
Uh,
joking. It's like
yeah,
you never find out it's unsuccessful on the day of. You might find out later, but no one has ever
yeah,
put out a press release.
right,
Unsuccessful surgery.
right. So yeah, so that's I mean, Omer was supposed to have a role in this team. He was
Yeah.
supposed to, the Heat were trying him out in the front court next to Bam, or even he might have got minutes as a backup center.
Hmm.
But now the Heat are thin up front. Like it's
Yeah.
Bam, and Bam is playing big minutes.
Yeah.
Dedmon is battling plantar fasciitis and playing through it, but you could tell that he's in pain, and his metrics haven't been great this year.
Hmm.
But behind
Hit a
those two
couple
guys,
huge threes though last night,
he did have a couple of huge threes,
and the
but
Heat's
behind
house went crazy.
it did. Those are two big shots. Like that was like when the
Right.
Heat were down like by third double digits, I think, and late in the third quarter, and
Yeah, it was.
kind of made it like by eight, I
If
think, entering the
they,
fourth
if
quarter.
it had, could have been become a blowout if
Yeah.
the shot's not
Yeah,
down.
those are big shots. But yeah, behind those two, like they have Orlando Robinson, and then it's like Udonis Haslem, Nikola Jovic, and Jamal Cain, I guess. So they have to hope if Bam goes down, I don't know what they'll do. That's the one guy. I mean, he's not replaceable in the first place, but like right now with the depth they have at that position.
Yeah, and it's not like you can just pull centers off the street. Like guards, you can always pull like a pretty good guard out of the G League, or I mean, we saw Dwayne Washington Jr. like last night. Like there's a lot of Dwayne Washington Jr.'s running around in the NBA. There's not there's not a lot of Omer Yurtsevens out there.
No, and that last year, that's what saved them. Omer played really, really well as a starting big. But yeah, they need to hope that Bam stays healthy, because I don't think they could survive an extended absence by Bam this year, because after Omer's injury and him probably being out until at least March or so.
I will say one thing that stood out to me last night. Again, my first game in person this year. When they play against a big center like DeAndre Ayton, it's like kind of jarring how small this lineup is, especially when Bam's out there. I mean, Dedmon's obviously a really big guy, and like Europe would have probably been useful last night in a game like that, where you've got such a big center where, and especially like you said, they're not switching Bam as much as they probably could, but like they just don't have a lot of other options beyond that to guard a big guy like that. And obviously, there's a lot of good centers in the league right now.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting, and that's like definitely, I think, an interesting conversation to have at some point. But they've changed the way they play defense. Like they don't switch as much. They're still switching a lot, but Bam is not switching as much. He's playing a lot of drop coverage, which is kind of weird to see him. I even asked him about it a few days ago, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not really used to it. I'm kind of trying to like learn how to do it, but it's not my comfort zone. I'm so used to switching." But in order for that, to avoid a Kyle Lowry being switched onto a big man, which other teams have taken advantage of for the past year, or even to start this season, like the Heat have made the adjustment of playing drop and kind of giving up that mid-range runner, but keeping Bam attached to the center. Is that playing to Bam's strengths and maximizing his defensibility? Probably not, but this team is not built for him to be guarding guards all the time, because they're so small around him. And that's part of why they've also used zone a lot too, because it keeps Bam in the middle, anchoring the defense. So it is interesting to see how they've adjusted their defensive scheme, because of kind of not having PJ and that big, PJ's not huge, but he's a bigger body that could survive against bigger players. They don't really have that right now, and you're seeing that with the way they're playing defense.
Yeah. To the number that kind of stood out for me about their defense down the stretch was they did not give up anything at the rim. I think they gave up 2 layups in the fourth quarter, and both were putbacks by Torrey Craig. So it was like that was, Bam obviously plays a big role in that, but that's just like, and the Suns are a really good mid-range. They probably take their shot profile is probably more
a ton of mid-range shots.
Average team. Yeah. So like they were getting not bad shots, but like you saw like if the Heat played man-to-man the way we know they can, it makes a big difference, but it's really hard to do that across 48 minutes. And, I think we mentioned that, like, they kind of played perfect for the last 8 minutes of the game, and the spotlight gets shown on it because it was in the last 8 minutes. But most NBA teams can have obviously most NBA teams, like, perfect stretch looks different than that, right? It, is like they go 7 for 9 from 3 and score, like, 25 points in a 5-minute stretch or something. But, the Heat can play a stretch like, if they did that to end the second quarter, we wouldn't be talking about it, right? And they can do that, right? Like you can play a perfect stretch. It doesn't always have to be right at the end of the game, but they just need more stretches. It doesn't have to be 8 minutes. That's a long time, but like they just need more stretches like that on a nightly basis, and this team will be in a much better spot. We mentioned like kind of struggle to play 48 minutes. Most teams do, but if you're going to struggle to play 48 minutes because depth issues or whatever, you got to play like a really good 6-7 minutes somewhere to build a lead.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they did against the Hornets 2 games ago, even. Like, when the third quarter, they made that huge run and they pulled away. I'll take that. I'm like, those games where we cover and it comes down to the final seconds, which it feels like every game this year.
I know.
Those are not easy, as you saw last night, David. Those are not easy to
I was like, I can't believe you made me do this.
Those are not easy, especially when you're on the road and you're trying to navigate where the locker room is and all that. So, I mean,
Yeah.
nobody cares about that, but I'll take double-digit results because that makes it easier on us.
Yeah, we'll see if they can get a couple of those on the road. All right, you got any final thoughts before we get going?
No, I mean, I think, now as I travel to Toronto later today, this is an important trip, right? Like I think, right, a successful trip would probably be 2-2. You come back 500 from a tough trip like this, you take it. So we'll see if the Heat can build on this momentum and kind of not have another setback over the next week.
And it could go better than 2. Like those are. It's not
It
like they're
could.
going to play
Yeah,
Phoenix, Golden State. Like
right.
they've got a chance. We'll see. I'll be
Or
really
3-1.
interested.
Yeah.
Again, I'll be really interested to see how they play tonight. Obviously, that'll be, or sorry, Wednesday night. It'll obviously be old news by the time people listen to this. But if they can really and again, as you mentioned, Toronto really, really banged up.
Yeah, they're missing
They can,
Siakam and Achua. Like that's a winnable game for the Heat.
yeah, if they can build on what they did on Monday, they basically were like, this is, I think Spo wanted them to learn that this is how we're going to have to play. I think he said, like, we found our identity tonight a little bit or showed what our identity should be. I'll be really interested to see how they can build on that. Obviously first against Toronto and then on this entire road trip.
Yeah, if they can beat Toronto, like this could be a 3-1 trip, but I think 2-2 you take it. That's kind of the goal, I think, entering.
Yeah, that sounds fair to me. All right. Thanks as always for listening. You can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony_Chiang. He will be on the road for this 4-game Heat trip starting in Toronto on Wednesday and going through the nation's capital later in the week. You can follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. Kind of a quiet week finally, right? Dolphins on a bye and Miami Clemson. I thought at the beginning of the year I was going to be going up to Clemson, but they eventually were like, this team is not worth sending 2 people up to Clemson for. So, but I'll be watching from home and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be.
What's the spread of that game? Do you know?
Last I saw, I think it was 19.
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought it might be 2-3 touchdowns, but I was like, that's a lot. Maybe they'll just do 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, Clemson's offense isn't great, but yeah, I mean, Miami was finally like good vibes, right? Like freshman
good vibes.
played
Well.
Yeah,
that's a good way to put it.
I don't know if you would say like, obviously anytime you beat a team by 3 touchdowns,
right?
Like it's not a bad thing, but like at least good vibes with all those young guys playing well.
Yeah, you felt good for them. They were happy after it's been a tough season, so it was good to see them kind of have a little bit of a breakthrough.
Yeah, 3rd-string quarterback gets a win. Yeah. Obviously not the backup quarterback, but still like good vibes, I would say, for the first time in a long time. All right. Thanks as always for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week.